everybody. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Andrew, and very excited to have on the channel today for our Breaking into Cyber series, Casey Beaumont, who, Casey, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you this time to give a quick little introduction on who you are. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Casey.
All right. My name is Casey Beaumont. I'm the Director of Advanced Consulting and Technical Incident Response for Marsh McLennan, which is a large Fortune 500 kind of financial services company that you've never heard of. And and so right now, my responsibilities include I oversee incident response, advanced consulting, which is kind of you take really advanced technical resources who have done many things, but you're able to apply them across the business on really complex security problems. I oversee technical risk management, and I've just recently kind of started taking on cyber threat intelligence, hunt, and in the future, kind of the always on red team. So now I've got quite a lot that I need to get very in depth with very quickly.
Well, man, if the belt wasn't full enough, you're throwing on more tools and more
Yeah.
skills. So, very excited to have you on the channel. And we're going to go ahead and get started with a lot of what people come onto this channel for and that aspect of breaking into cyber. So, Casey, as a director, obviously you get to sit probably across many different panels when it comes to the hiring schema of your organization. Is there anything in particular that maybe you look for when it comes into like a good candidate, whether that's an engineer, an analyst, a lead, that you find that when you see those are really strong skills to have on a resume?
Yeah, absolutely. So it depends on the position, right? Like you're going to look at someone more closer to entry level differently than you're looking at someone who's applying for a SOC manager role or someone who should be kind of more experienced in what they're doing. I'm personally really passionate on not doing interview questions that are like big technical traps, right? Or like those horrible, like logic, there's a right answer and you're going to panic and not do well. I like to throw out kind of situations. How do you gently feel out if someone knows what they're talking about without giving them, like, well, you better know every specific tool. You better be able to go through MITRE ATT&CK and give me all these techniques. Like that would mess me up every time. So what is really notable is, if we give someone a hypothetical of how would you do an investigation, here's some things going on, like just walk us through it. Uh, so many people really struggle with giving a little bit of information and then shutting up, right? Like even if your first reaction is, "Oh no, I'm not a good interviewer. I'm drawing a blank." Sometimes the act of talking yourself through it, right? Like show us your thought process. Show us kind of the angles and how you're wrapping your mind around the question. That often gives a lot of indications of, okay, I think this person's really done this before. So to use like a SOC analyst role, it's like, oh, how do you investigate a phishing email? How do you
Yep.
investigate, there's an alert on a machine. How would you start to look about at what happened on that machine? There's a big difference between, oh, I hypothetically know, or I'm secretly trying to read ChatGPT in the background, and someone who is like, okay, I could probably talk for 20 minutes if you don't interrupt me on all the different places my mind goes. And oftentimes through that talking, you start to pick up passion, right? So, like, I'm a really animated talker. I tend to be smiling and really excited about what I talk about. And there's nothing worse in an interview when someone looks like they're in pain the whole time. They seem very monotone about their answers. And sometimes people just aren't good interviewees. People get who are incredibly talented clam up in an interview, but that passion of like, this is what I'm into and I'm excited about it and I can't wait to tell you about it really translates.
So first off, the phishing email question, I've had that so many times when it comes into even some mid-level interviews, like how would you investigate a phishing email? And I think it's some people think of it that are very passionate and actually are very good on doing like DLP and phishing investigations. They hear that question and some people think, man, that's a really easy question. However, I've asked it several different ways and several different times, and it's just like you can really get really technical with it, but also very like just a bluff and bottom line up front, like, oh well, I'd investigate it, I'd pull up logs, I'd confirm it's not a legit
Yeah,
phishing email.
top
It's
level.
like where I've heard the answer of like, well, I'd go into the logs, I'd check everything. I've heard people like I would assign the case to myself as if it came in as an alert. I'm like, okay, we're going from step one. All right. I've also heard like I would contain the host immediately and lock down everything. I'm like, we're getting a little intense here. Hold on, let's make sure it's not a false positive. So I think that's a great way though to kind of really kind of like dig into as an entry level, like you said, kind of like, okay, well, let's just feel out the water, let them talk through the process. And then when it gets to maybe you're as more like a tier two, tier three interviewer or an engineer, like, okay, well, like we know what's going to happen during tier one steps when they do their full investigation. And then you can almost even tweak that question like, hey, they've now escalated to tier two. What are the next steps after they've confirmed the phishing email, they confirmed it's valid? What are those next steps that's going to happen?
Hmm.
And just like you said, across the spectrum of interviewing, I think at different levels, whether you're an entry level analyst trying to get in as a SOC analyst, to a tier two engineer, even to a SOC manager, those questions are going to vary. Because as a manager, you're not even really possibly even looking at the investigation. You're looking at second, third order effects like, hey, okay, well, if we're going to contain this host, is that going to affect business? Okay, now is this spread across the network? Hey, was it valid? Was it actually bad? Is this something we have to now do like do we need to call out and ping IR? Do we need to do an investigation? Or is this gotten into any other kind of additional servers? Or is this deploying ransomware? And so I think that's an excellent point to say when it comes into, depending on that level, you're going to get different answers. And yeah, just talking it out. Because I just like you said, I'm very passionate. I'm an extroverted IT guy. So it's like when I get into a conversation, one, I turn red. It's a defense mechanism. And then two, I just also have to talk with my hands. I also know that I'll need to slow down because I like to talk fast. So I ensure that when those questions are asked, I say, oh, that's a great question. Get me my 1001, 1002 to kind of think. And then I start my walk. I start that process. Well, this is step one I'd go through here. And I try to lay it down to a standardized and systematic process to where these are the things I'd initially check, start going through logs, assign myself the case, make sure I'm annotating all the work I'm doing. And then my conclusion at the end of like, hey, I'm either going to be going two ways. One, this is a true positive where I need to contain it or maybe pull it from the host. Or, hey, this is a false positive. Maybe this is just spam and the user's already reported it. But hey, this is just a random newsletter that he got subscribed to by going to a conference because now vendors are going to send him messages all the time.
Well, and it's interesting too, and something that reflects actual experience is how much time is really worth spending on this particular thing. So, a SOC analyst, let's say you work a phishing queue, you might have to process an insane amount of phishing a day. Do you really, are you going to do like a crazy deep dive on every single fish when half the time, you get that muscle memory? You should walk through it for the interview, but in real life, you can look at an email and be like, that's bad,
Yeah.
or that's spam, that's advertising, that's okay, that's legitimate
Yep.
conversation. You hover over the URL, you're like, I know everything I need to know about
Yeah.
this.
3 to
I
5 minutes, you'll know this is bad or I should look into this more. Ah,
and
this is just spam.
yeah, and what you do at your company depends, and it really depends on if it's bad. Did something happen? Like what follow on checks are you going to do? But approaching a question like that, like you are going to spend 4 hours on this investigation, unless it's tied to a major incident that led to a compromise that you're, getting root cause
Yes.
analysis for, it would make no sense. So it's an interesting, nuanced question, but oftentimes for interviewers who are hopefully experienced in the thing they're interviewing about, it immediately kind of tells like, yeah, this person, I could drop them on the team and they would be amazing.
No, and that's awesome. And it's just so funny because the next question that we're going to lead into is kind of like what got you into cybersecurity, and you're already kind of leading into that with your passion. And it's also just showing that you care. And like, folks sometimes don't just get into cyber. I know some people this day and age are like, oh man, I want to get into cyber. I want to make six figures. I'm going to do this boot camp and I'm going to win big. I'm like, that's a 1% chance. It happens. But a lot of people that get into this career are not doing it for the money. They enjoy it. They're passionate about cybersecurity. They messed around with computers when they were a kid. They hacked their video game and got infinite lives or increased their damage by like 500 plus so they could just one shot every monster. So the next question we kind of lead into, Casey, is what kind of got you into cybersecurity? So obviously now at a director level, you've definitely grown and advanced your career. And many of us growing up, I wanted to be a police officer. I know folks that want to be pastors, farmers, lawyers. We don't tell our kindergarten teacher then, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm going to be a director of incident response and cybersecurity stuff. So, what was kind of the passion that led behind it?
So I guess it's kind of a boring answer in that, high school, you don't know what you want to do. Cybersecurity was not a thing that I knew about. I, was a woman in high school. Like I didn't have a lot of technical friends. I didn't have the luxury of having a bunch of friends where they were like hacking on things. The closest thing I got to that at a young age was I was very passionate about video games. So I was, an honors kid. I was like, what's practical? What should I do for a degree that will translate into some sort of money? And I picked computer science to start. I switched to computer systems engineering, which is like a hybrid between electrical and computer science for engineering. No, for no reason. I just thought, okay, that seems harder. I'll do that.
Oh man.
Um, and I had no idea what that meant. That was the first time I had seen programming, and I did it. I just knew like that's probably a smart thing to do. Took one class on information security, I think it was called, which basically was very like CISP light, and was a software engineer for a year. Fortunately for me, at my company, I was at a defense contractor at the time, which is a great place to start out because they tend to have good training budgets.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
they had a requirement to have so many CISSPs. I wasn't on a project that needed it, but it helped in their client bids to say we've got these people who are qualified to be secure developers. So they put us through a boot camp. I got that, and I just coincidentally was starting to do patching work for Army systems. Fortunately, a lot of our industry is sometimes chance, right? I was very, very fortunate in that I knew someone who was in security at that company, and they say, "Hey, we've had some turnover. We're looking for like a very, very junior incident response role." And I'm like, I sure I can speak to what I can. And my strategy with interviewing, and I still do this to this day, is that perpetual intern attitude of like, I'm just happy to be here. I will tell you all about what I can do, but I'm so excited to learn and learn how to do things the way you want me to do these things. So I was extremely fortunate. So full transparency, I never experienced being in a SOC. I was never like a network engineer or an IT before that. I had to really hit the ground running on okay, what is incident response with basically a CISSP, and that's it to my name. Did that for 6 or 7 years. Switched to incident response over at my current company, financial services, which is about the harshest transition in the world to go from a defense contractor where rules are rules and like you've got that hard backing for security to financial services where you come into a place and it's like Wild West, at
Why
least
does everyone have DeepSeek on their computer? It's like what?
it's coming to a less mature at the time organization. So the reason I transitioned from incident response, so I've been at my company 10 years, wasn't necessarily because I was the best incident responder, right? It's about the different skill sets, and not everyone wants to go into management, right? A lot of the incident responders I worked with at Marsh McLennan are incredibly technical people. They've been in management before, but it bites, Like there's times where it's so disheartening to have to play politics. It's disheartening to have your excellent security advice disregarded because the business doesn't want to do it. And so slowly over time, first I started getting into leadership. So incident scribing. I was the natural note taker of the group and got good at that, and just started migrating that direction. And my team was very much behind me when it came to the point where we're like, we need a manager for this team. Our org is going from like 10 people to 20 or 30, or like as we grew. And so just over time, it's always a learning experience. So the director thing for me, very, very recent. And in kind of a reorg, I'm picking up more teams. And so the interesting challenge at that level is I'm very, very comfortable as a manager for incident response, right? And advanced consulting for us broke off that. But for the first time for me, picking up a team where that wasn't what I did for a living first is a fascinating challenge because I think everyone would agree you want a manager for a team to be capable of doing the job of that team.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't want to hire a security manager and have them just be like, I have never done this before. I'm just here to tell people what to do. Not a good look. So it's a fascinating challenge. And I've always just been someone where I'm like, I let the winds of my career take me where they should go, right? Things will just naturally unfold. I'm open to a lot. Um, and I'm just, excited to be here, right? Like the perpetual intern.
No, and you're not wrong. And it's the same thing in the military. It's there's such good NCOs that even myself that when I was in E7, they're like, oh, you should go be an officer. You should be a warrant officer. I'm like, Like once you go to the officer side, everything gets more admin, and you're not with the troops, and it's less technical. And then I found out about warrant officer, and I'm like, oh man, I can be a warrant officer and be a technical SME still, and like still be fingers on keys and do incident response and IR and do reports, but still be the cool guy and hang out with the troops and not be like the boss. I'm like, that sounds pretty good, but yeah, same thing. I've met great engineers and leads where I'm like, man, why are you not a manager? Like, I don't want to be. I don't want to. They love being technical too much, to where once you jump to the manager side of things, I've had managers that are they went through the SANS Masters course, like schooling, so they had like all the SANS certifications, and they're so good at hands-on malware reverse analysis, and they can look at something right away and tell you exactly what it is. I've also had managers that are kind of just there to manage, and like they're really good. They have their PMP. They can still dive in and kind of help dissect a case a little bit, but they're more there for the project management side of things to make sure things are getting done in an accurate amount of time. They're meeting MTTAs, MTTRs, making sure metrics are going through, doing all the higher up in the sense of leadership skills that are necessary that aren't always the technical necessary to need things, but someone still has to signs the paycheck. Someone has to set up the schedule, make sure that travel and everything gets set up for CSERT exercises and other things across the spectrum. And it's hard, and not a
Well,
lot of people like to do that.
those soft skills sometimes you have to develop. Like for me, when I realized like I'd been doing the management thing for a while, I was like, I maybe it's time to do the master's thing. And I thought, do I do a master's in cybersecurity, which is perfectly valid option, or do I get an MBA, right? Do I focus on the soft skills that I'm missing? And I ended up choosing the MBA because I was like, you know what sounds really useful? A project management class. You know what sounds really useful? A finance class, so I can better understand what the heck is going on when we're in budgeting season and actually be intelligent in that area too. So it was really interesting to kind of be like, okay, now I need to go through online masters, in my 30s and be like, oh shoot. But it's been incredibly helpful to try to be like, I gotta be, the best I can be, um, and build on kind of those skills.
Well, skills are important, and obviously we've mentioned how back in the DoD and currently in a DoD contract, the funding is always there to go to courses, SANS classes, cons, uh, subscriptions for fun things like Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, things like that. Is there a certain training environment, or maybe a certain training that you would recommend more than others when people ask you, like, "Hey, Casey, how can I get into cybersecurity, and what should I use to study or train?" What do you think are some good tools that people can use to kind of get into the field?
I'd say I'd like the hands-on one, and we've even tried to do things like, with Try Hack Me. Like I know there's like Christmas challenges where every day, like leading up to Christmas, those are fun to do in groups if you're at work or to work on yourself. Um, I love for backgrounds for folks in security, networking backgrounds. I never got it myself, but I get excited when someone worked in IT before. They understand the network. They maybe have certs around that because you know what is the most attractive thing in the world during major IR when you get like an F5 expert on or someone who's the subject matter expert who's not in security, but you're like, I need to make sure that we're interpreting this stuff right and how the network actually works. And so that none of us are making assumptions because we know
Yeah,
security, but we don't know how this actually is architected. Um, so I would say there's a lot of those like more accessible, lower cost certs that are great starting points. I'm also in interviews, I'm never firm. I never put a requirement on a cert. It's
yeah,
meaningless.
yep.
Um, for me, I renew my certs. I left one of my SANS ones lapse, and I kick myself constantly. It was my incident handler one, and I'm
Oh
like,
no.
but a lot of people I know who are really, really advanced, they let all theirs expire. I'm like, it doesn't mean you don't know your stuff. So
Yep.
SANS is great if a company pays for it. I know
Yes.
they're like $10,000 now. Um, I know a person where sometimes your work will pay for a master's. That SANS master's you mentioned, holy cow, what a life hack to just
Yes.
that's the master's I'm doing, and to just get all these SANS courses uh, fantastic if you're like a SOC analyst or an incident responder and you're trying to become well rounded. Um, so yeah, I would say the hands-on stuff that's really practical because some of the certs that are too high level, it's great to understand what some of the things are, but I think I took a CISSP, I took the CEH, and that one felt a little bit kind of more like training for executives so that they get hands on for like a week and they'll never touch it again. And I've taken a handful of SANs, um, but touching it, doing it, having the labs, that's the only thing that's going to make the content stick.
Yeah, and I've talked to I think two or three other SOC managers and even engineers, a lot of people on my channel that all agree. Like you can have an alphabet of certifications behind your name. If you can't recall the information and actually use it, it's just a cert on a wall. And it's just like you
It
have
doesn't
to
give
be able
you
to leverage it.
authority,
Yeah.
right? Like when you've got 10 certs on your signature line,
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you can overrule someone else's opinion, right? Like you have to earn the respect of, are you an actual subject matter expert in what you're talking about?
Exactly. And it's the hands-on skills. Like Jeremy Giroux over at Charles Schwab, he said the same things. Like, look, like if I have a guy that's on an interview panel for a SOC analyst position and he has a GSEC SAN certification, but then I have another individual that has a CompTIA Security Plus, and if I ask them all the same three generic questions, and that person that has a Security Plus answers those questions better, whether or not that person has that $10,000 SAN certification, I'm going to go with the best candidate.
Yep.
So you have to just that's the thing that I say it's important. If you decide to self invest and put yourself through certifications, I put myself through a few of mine before I learned the army would pay for them. Before I got into cyber, so I was like two certs in. I'm like, wait a minute, the army will pay for these? Um, yeah, but I did some self investing and got some of mine. And like, if you're willing to do the self investment, like rock on, because it's certs aren't necessary to get into the field. They help when it comes into I think breaking through the HR algorithm to get through like when the recruiters are putting on the unicorn list of requirements that sometimes most recruiters I don't think understand what they're looking for. I've
I
talked.
find that I have trust issues. So you work really closely with recruiters to explain, and I try to write postings to not have absolutes. I say it'd be great if you have a bachelor's or equivalent experience. It'd be nice if you had some certs or equivalent experience, 3 years of this or something similar. And then I always just personal preference. I do my own resume screenings because I would hate to have an incredible candidate be like, "Hey, I never heard anything," and then you're like, "Oh, you got screened, I guess." And I would
Yeah.
have never loved, I would have loved your resume. So, security is so specific sometimes about what you're looking for, and sometimes the job market is rough, and you get people applying for things and kind of shooting their shot for stuff that they may or may not be qualified for. That I feel like you kind of need that experienced eye to be like, what matters here?
Yeah, I've had buddies review resumes. I've had my friends that are in like those leadership roles that do uh, recruitment for IT. I'm like, hey, can you just read my resume? Does this look good? Am I hitting keywords? I've never used the same resume like for the same application, so I'm always changing it up, changing the cover letter if it requires a cover letter, because you're not. I've talked to some folks like I've applied 100 different places and I'm getting no calls back. I'm like, okay, well, first question, are you tailoring your resume to each application, or are you just like shotgunning out your resume to 100 different places and kind of like spaghetti on the wall to see what sticks?
And are you actually qualified for what you're applying to? Because
Yes.
I can speak from experience that, like this week, reviewing resumes, and people, I don't even think they read the posting. Like they're not in the same industry. They're just shooting their shot. And there's certain times, like over the last 10, 15, 20 years, where there's been times where it was like, oh, there haven't been many people going for this role. I know when I was hiring an incident responder last, I felt like, it was hard to find good candidates and I was getting like 15 or 20 applications. I have a role right now that got 250 applications and we had to close it after a week. That's crazy competition. And so if your resume doesn't meet the requirements posted, it was gone because my problem is I have to choose like the 10 best to
Yeah.
narrow down out of 250. I can't afford right now to give someone a shot based on maybe potential. It's really rough, and it's going to depend on what your specialty is. But I feel for people looking for SOC roles, because how do you compete? And how do you get to that interview stage when without things like certs, right? So you're a local support. You're someone who's in IT and you want to transition so bad. If you're not differentiating yourself with that training, with your home lab, with your something you can put on a resume to say I'm passionate about this even though I haven't gotten in yet, it's a really tough time to be looking for entry level.
No, it is. And I won't lie. I've told people like, hey man, shoot your shot, apply for those next higher roles.
Well, and that's a
But
trait that
yeah,
tends to be good. And I tell to women specifically, there's kind of a stereotype that women will take requirements on job postings very literal. And I'll look at something and be like, I like when I applied at the grade level I applied for at my current company, I didn't qualify for that at the time. But I interviewed for it. I got the job, and the stereotype is that men will see it and shoot their shot. Women will be like, "Oh no, I shouldn't. I should make sure I'm more qualified." But it's just, it really depends on what it is. And so now I think that it just explains when people say, "Yeah, I've gotten 100 no's." It's like sometimes the market can be so competitive that you really have to take the time to cater your resume to what you're applying for and really stand out so that they want to interview you, and then you can sell them on your personality.
no, definitely. And when it comes into, I guess, like networking and also leveraging, because I know I my first job into cyber was very much, I applied 100 different places, got 100 no's. But also Jared Robick, which was one of my mentors, when I was leaving Kuwait, coming back from a deployment, had my Sec Plus, was knocking out my master's in cybersecurity. I leveraged my network to kind of get an in to the state of Arizona. And he's like, hey man, I know the hiring manager. I know now Ryan Murray, who's the state CISO here in Arizona. He's like, hey, let me tell them about you real quick. At least get your resume to them, and then hopefully you can just rock the interview. So my next question leading into that though is like, so networking and kind of getting into like cons and meetups and different groups that, like, I know there's WeSys, there's DC480, there's B sides. What's your advice when it comes into networking and finding a mentor?
I would say it's critical. It's something that has had a direct impact on every job I've ever had. In college, I was in an engineering fraternity, so that was a network, right? I went from not really, I had like a couple close friends to suddenly having a network of people who would vouch for you, and that was how I got my first internship. Then through that fraternity as well, that was the person who got me my next internship at that defense contractor, which I turned into an entry level position. I never had to interview for that entry level position because I was already an intern. You sneak right in, right?
Perfect.
And then when I switched into financial services, I would have not known the job existed. I would have never applied for it, except a former colleague at the defense contractor had gone there the year before and said, hey, we have positions. I want you to apply. I think you should do this. And I hemmed and hawed, but I was convinced into doing it. But having those connections from people that you view as a mentor, when you've got team members and you respect their work, you know, build personal connections. Work doesn't have to be soulless, right? Like there's something really special to me about incident response when you're doing like a night shift, right? And I love to pair up really experienced people with really junior people and just put them, on the midnight shift and to say, just start talking about stuff, just ride along and like start getting experience, and then all of a sudden you're starting to build these relationships. um, and it's kind of funny. Sometimes you see these things happen where a chain of people will go from one company and someone will get a job somewhere else and they'll just start pulling all their buddies in. There's something to be said about local groups. So DC 480, fantastic. I feel like I've kind of found a home after a couple years of being too nervous to join a group and go to a meetup and stuff like that. Finding your people at DEF CON, like finding something like a subculture to be a part of. It's terrifying at first, but the second you realize you've got people that you can reach out to and joke about, get that signal group of friends where you can just send memes to each other or whatever, it goes so quickly from a signal group of memes to, hey, I got let go, who's got a connection, and then people mobilize and help each other out. So um, don't go it alone, right? By building relationships with people, they respect you, you respect them. It's like that's a lifetime potentially of, you never know where they're going to be, and maybe they'll be hiring you one day, maybe you'll be hiring them.
Yeah, I've explained, and just recently I've opened up my network into offering free mentoring and just even talking to people breaking into the field, because I've gotten a lot of feedback, positive feedback, like, hey, look, like I'm looking to do this transition. I don't know anybody in cyber, and it's just like it's hard to reach out to people, especially on LinkedIn or people you don't know, where in a sense you're kind of shooting your shot, saying, "Hey, like I'm looking to get into this role. You're obviously in this role I dream to be in. Would you be willing to talk for 15, 20 minutes and just kind of share how you did it?" And then I hope that when I get to have these conversations with people, that I may not have the answer for them. Like I've had a lot of folks recently reach out to me like, "I want to be a GRC analyst." I'm like, I don't do GRC. I understand compliance, but I can talk to you on what I would do. And then I can also try to find you someone in my network to talk to that can actually give you a better trajectory of where you should be going and what search you should be doing. But yeah, networking's huge. And same thing with the conferences. I remember I went to my first DEF CON 2 years ago, and I was a kid in a candy shop. But it was such a huge thing. I just didn't know what to do. I was with Jared at the time, again, Jared Robick, and he just took me under his wings. Like, all right, man, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go check this out. Hey, what do you want to do next? I'm like, I want to go here, I want to go here. And I'd recommend if you get to go, try to go with a buddy or definitely have like a plan of action.
100%.
Yeah,
Buddy system, it is terrifying.
yeah. Not to the fact that it's like you're just gonna go there and like no one's gonna want to talk to you. Like that's the complete opposite. Everyone will want to talk to you, and at least when I was there, I would talk to random people. Like this is my first time. Oh, dude, welcome to DEF CON. Do you have any questions? It was the most positive experience I've ever had going to a conference, not knowing anybody. And I got introduced in like to AI hacking. I got introduced to Gandalf AI. That was like the first little workshop I got to go in of like, hey, we're gonna hack AI and get it to tell us what we want. And I'm like, this is so cool. And like it's just there's so many options you can go there. You can hack a satellite, you can hack a fridge,
Oh,
you can
yeah.
hack a
And
Tesla.
it
Like
doesn't matter what part of your career you're in. You walk around and you're like, I have crazy imposter syndrome just seeing the crazy things people are doing
right?
in their own specialized fields. And DEF CON's amazing because as your career develops, you're getting something different out of something like Cactus Con or DEF CON or any conference. My first DEF CON was DEF CON 20. I was either still in school, so not in security, or I was very, very fresh. Um, Maybe even thinking about getting, like I had my CISSP and that's it. I knew one person. So you know that one person and you kind of glom onto their friend group and then you kind of start. That's actually where I met kind of my first person from DC 480 that we're still friends with to this day. And through that, I went the next few years, but every year got easier because I was making more connections and talking to people. Had to take a break to have some kids and, kind of like refocus on that. But now I'm so passionate about going. Early in my career, I was going to all the talks, right? I felt obligated to be in all the talks. My work was paying for it. So I was like, I got to, get my money's worth.
Yeah.
Now I go and I don't think I sat through a talk in the past couple of years because I'm so focused on like seeing people, socializing, you realize all of a sudden, wow, I got old. Now I have meetings with vendors at DEF CON. You're like, what happened to me? But what you get out of it, it's like you only can scratch the surface of what's there and being shown off.
Yeah, like I know this year, this was my second year at Cactus Con. I spent majority of my time in Career Village. And in Career Village, I helped do mock interviews. I was doing resume reviews and just talking to young college and high school kids and even some young adults of wanting to get into cybersecurity, which is, I love it because I have the passion for it. That's what this channel is all about. It's about getting to hear people's different journeys of how they got into the field, whether it was by coincidence, whether it was planned out, whether it's because they just thought it was the right thing to do. And I'm excited this year for DEF CON and shoot out to Josh Mason, who actually got this village approved. We have a noob village coming on this year that is exactly meant for noobs. So
Ooh,
we're going to have some cool aspects of Meet a Legend. So different people in the field. We'll have hacker history. We're going to have a no stupid question booth where you can ask any stupid question you want on cybersecurity or breaking into cyber or any and or their question of. Also going to have a cool, very, I think, beginner-friendly CTF. And it's going to be a fun little, just kind of hang out for new folks that are there. We're going to have a little fun little buddy system where it's like, if it's your new time to the con, like, hey, I want to get to Solder Village, but I don't know where to go. Hey, we'll have a buddy real quick walk you to Solder Village, get to chat and network, and then they get you there. They hang out for a few minutes, and then they'll walk back to New Village. So we're super excited for it. So just shoot out for New Village, and if you're heading to DEF CON this year, that's where you'll be able to find me. It's going to be a super fun time. But Casey, I have two more questions for you, and we're going to kind of wrap up. So, um, it's cybersecurity right now, as some would say, it's so hard to get into, and the jobs are so refined and they're looking for unicorns. What's your advice for folks? And your chuckle makes me know it's true. So, with your advice, what do you think's the best approach when it comes into looking for that entry role, or looking for even that next role, that those that are already in the field looking for that next hop?
So I think the hardest part is getting a foot in the door. And usually I would say, like, if it was me starting over again as, fresh out of college or high school with like some skills, like a tier one SOC, honestly, that's the fastest way. If you can get the job, the most skills that you are going to put into yourself in the shortest amount of time.
Yep.
A SOC gets to touch everything, right? And so that's for me the foundation of anything else. And the way we tend to envision it is the path going is you can progress through the SOC. Typically, SOCs are viewed usually as stepping stones, right? Some people like to stay in the SOC forever. It's a really good mix of like maybe this is the stress level you prefer, or the work life balance that you prefer. But then as you get to a certain point in the SOC, you specialize, right? And so it becomes much easier to take a leap of faith into a new role when you're already on the team, you already know everybody, your manager already knows how capable you are. That's the time to shoot your shot and be like, you know what I could do? I think I could take on insider threat. I think I would like to talk to the CTI team more and find out about what they do, because once you're on a team, you should not be siloed. At a good company, your teams should be talking. There should be some blurred lines about who can do what and information sharing. No one should be hiding the things that they
Yeah.
can do.
Yeah. Don't be a gatekeeper. 100%.
No, it's the second someone says, "Hey, can I shadow this really cool ticket, or can we do, a collaborative like readout of like, oh, we had to escalate this ticket to incident response. It got really weird, but I didn't get to see what happened at the end. Can we do a cool readout at the end where we like talk about what happened?" Then you're building skills. But there's alternate ways in too. Some folks have had success where they couldn't land that SOC position, right? Like someone always beat them out, and they took an intermediate role in the same organization. Like they took a risk role or a governance role or something that might not be like where they want to be forever, but you're building security skills, you're building relationships, and then the next time there was a position, that was an easier lateral move.
Yep.
Um, so really, it's like don't try to go straight from nothing to, yeah, I'm going to be like the world's best pen tester. I'm going to do something highly specific, because a lot of those subculture roles require a big baseline of knowledge
Yeah.
that
Very.
those foundational skills are only going to make you stronger. Like an awesome CTI analyst, one, that's a lot of like self study, and that like CTI in particular feels like one of those things where you really need to be passionate and learning. But I would love it if you were a SOC analyst first, because you need to have those investigation skills. So kind of the default I would say is SOC, but really any entry point into the organization you're looking for, that security is something you're well rounded in a way that others are not.
Yeah. It's reach out, get into it. I've obviously everyone's always harps on help desk, help desk, help desk. Help desk's way in, but it's very much like, weirdly enough, I my very first job when I got back from my first deployment in 2014 was oddly enough as IT help desk, and it moved me up to a another outage management analyst where we dealt with outages across the
Yeah,
network.
it's incredibly real. It's this like the major incident management or something, or the help desk. It's just another flavor of SOC. It's just
Pivot,
looking at
you just
different things.
pivot, and I've
And
given
human skills and empathy about
yes,
people going through something, that you should never look down at someone in a different part of IT, because they are the cornerstone of. It's like, when you go into a local office, those local IT guys, you need to be sucking up to everybody in IT, because everyone is doing something different that's like backbreaking, mental work. And just because it's not your field that you're interesting doesn't make theirs any less, right? Like,
yeah, and the soft skills I think that the IT help desk gave me were huge, and that's one thing that I emphasize people too. Like, don't forget the soft skills. Technical skills are great, but if you can also, if you're the person that solved an issue or solved a problem, and someone needs to brief an executive or C-suite, and they're like, "Hey, man, you're the one that knows this the best. We need you to come talk to the CEO or the CISO to talk about what happened and kind of what we did for remediation." Just practice that stuff. It's very not many IT people. I'm an extroverted IT guy, a rare 1%, but not many of us like to talk. Not many people in IT were recluses. I
And
remember,
you don't have to talk to the execs, but going back to that phishing interview question, a big piece of that nobody talks about, but to me would be a huge green flag is how are you comforting the user? How are you explaining it to the user so that they feel like maybe they're mad
yeah,
because a legitimate email got blocked by the dumb email system and why did security I know my client doesn't have a bad site, like how dare you? How are you explaining it in a way that's like human and friendly and is building a reputation for your security culture?
I've had those calls.
Oh yeah. And
hard
so
relate.
it is such an important skill for someone that, I've gotten calls, I run phishing programs, I'm the bad guy, where someone is literally in tears because they're scared about, I clicked this, am I going to be fired? And you have to have those human skills to be like, this is what we're doing, this is why it's important. You're okay, like even if they are the root cause of a major incident at your company that cost the company tons of money, they are not a bad person and they shouldn't be punished for it,
Yeah,
right? Mistakes are made, but it's how you handle it.
no, exactly. And Casey, I'm so glad I've gotten to have you on this channel tonight. And I have I think two last questions for you, really, but they go in tandem. But first off, if you've been following this long, please like, subscribe, message me your favorite part on the comments below. And Casey, as a thank you, you're gonna also get some awesome, cool ginger hacker swag for the time I've gotten to see you away today from your family and your busy day at work. So, final two questions I have for you. So, what does Casey like to do when she's not doing cyber to relax, to unplug? What do you do to kind of get that mental reset to get ready for that next day?
I am very into video games still. I have much less time for it.
Hell
My
yeah.
treat to myself this week is the Oblivion remaster. I have less time to do
Nice.
MBA. And then I randomly picked up crocheting. Um,
Okay.
I will go get my little mascot guy.
Yeah, let's see it.
But I joke that with incident response, we're like trash raccoons, digging through horrible trash piles of logs. So this was an attempt to make a little mascot for the team. I also have an angry one.
Dude, that's so cool.
And I wanted something, sometimes you have hobbies that don't produce like a work product, like something with your hands. And so crochet was just something where I'm like, I could figure this out. And then next thing you know, you're making stuffed animals for your kids.
If you can make me a ginger raccoon, that'd be so cool.
I
Anyway.
Yeah, when I graduate with my master's, I'm gonna have so much time for activities. So
Yes, so
I'll get
cool.
back into it.
Yeah, I've heard. I'm holding off on the Oblivion remaster. I've heard good things about it. I just don't need another game in my library that's going to eat more time away from my life.
Yeah,
Uh, but that's awesome. Very cool. Well, final question I have for you, Casey, is what would be your last piece of advice for those that are still trying to break into cyber and to get into that first role?
I would just say, we've covered it a couple times, but just invest in yourself. Like dedicate the time. Nothing will be handed to you. And even when you've got that role, you get out of it what you put into it, right? So
Yes.
when you landed that SOC position, it doesn't mean you can just rest on your laurels forever. The greatest careers are the people where it doesn't have to be outside of work. Like, oh, some people you want to go and turn off a little, but you need to be hustling to get something new out of your actual work every single day, whether that's in your personal time or just on the clock. You never stop learning and improving and trying to figure out, okay, well, every major incident we've had, how could I do this better? I'm not happy enough with how well I did. Like, what could I do? And that's the greatest spurts of growth in your career is when you're challenging yourself and you're not just resting on, I do tickets, I go home. I do tickets, I go home. You'll have a period of your career where you're like, why am I not moving up? Right.
No, that's excellent advice. And those getting into cyber, you will be continuously learning. The field is always moving, it's always changing. Threats are getting more advanced and dangerous for our organizations that we need to make sure we're also staying sharp in. So, well, awesome. Casey, this was an excellent episode of Breaking the Cyber. Thank you guys so much for sticking around if you've had made it this long. And as always, I'll catch you on the next video.